Hello felting friends, welcome to this week's video. This week I thought I'd push myself and try something different, and I thought I'd film it and show you how it goes. I'm actually quite pleased with this one. It's not perfect, but it does at least look like what it was supposed to be. So I'm going to show you how I made this VW campervan. I used a reference picture and I simply googled 1960s VW campervan, and then I just copied pictures from that. I have put a drawing in the description box below if you want to download it. And anyway, so this is what we're doing. I hope you have fun with it, and we'll crack on and I'll show you how it's done. So there's a fair bit of scope with this one because obviously I've done my van in some colours that I have, but because it's a hippie van, 1960s sort of hippie thing, you can go mad and do whatever you like on the main van itself, any colours, any shapes, anything you like. And so I thought that would be quite fun because it'll give you something extra you can play with if you want to. So at the moment all I'm doing is building up the sky, and I'm starting with a slightly darker colour up at the top of the picture, and I'm working down to a lighter colour as I come towards the horizon. And as you can see, I've not mixed anything with it, I've literally just put it down. And here I'm just putting a few little white wispy bits. Again, you don't have to do those if you don't want to, but do make sure you felt down the top really well, which is what I've done. This is speeding again quite quickly because there was quite a lot to do and I didn't want you sitting there watching me felt for hours. So I've used the ruler just to establish a level horizon line. I started off with a nice dark blue, and then I'm just mixing varying shades of sea colour blue to go on there nice and thinly, and that will look like some waves in the distance. There's only going to be a little bit of sea, that's it really, and then I'm just putting some white bits for a few waves. So we haven't got a lot of sea in this one, but you can obviously, as I do quite often, go over the edge of your drawing if you've traced this onto your wool felt. Don't worry about going over the edge, because if you've got the actual picture then you'll be able to cut it out like I do sometimes. You'll see what I'm doing anyway. So we're just popping on some sand, and on this side here is a little bit of a hill, so we're going to have a little bit of a hill just there, and then that will come back down into the sand colour again. We'll add some variety to the sand later on. So I'm just grabbing bits that I've got. In fact, having said that, there's a little bit darker there, but generally it's all one colour. And if you have some to hand now, you can always add a little bit of dark like I've done. And what I'm doing here now is I'm building up some of the shadow that's going to be under the campervan itself. I'm just putting in a basic idea of where I want the shadow to go to start with, and then we can work on that a bit more later on. The only thing I've given you in the drawing is literally the campervan, so you can have any kind of background that you want. You can put it in a field or anything you like really. I was quite excited to do the campervan. When I was a little girl, when I was about 4 or 5, I remember we were going on holiday, but I didn't know where or what, and my dad turned up with a blue VW campervan like this, and it was so exciting. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe you could pop the roof and sleep in a campervan like this. And I don't remember too much of the holiday, but I do remember it leaked and all the bedding got wet. And how my mum managed to cook a full English breakfast for 5 people and make cups of tea and all this stuff in this little van. We were away for a fortnight in it. We parked up on the Yorkshire moors overnight and things. It was a wonderful time. So I don't remember too much, but I do remember trying to sleep in it, which was not very easy. And I think this is why I've always hankered after having a caravan or like a motorhome, something like that. I think it all stems back from that holiday. So anyway, here we are. I've literally just pinned that back on so that I can get things the right shape, and then I'm using it to draw around with the colours that I want to do my van in. And so when I take this off, I've got the basic fan shape. So that's why it doesn't matter too much if you've gone over the edges of your drawing. And I do actually change this a little bit as well, because that's got 4 windows at the back after the main window, and I ended up with 3. But I did check, and there's campervans, they're very different. Although the basic shape's the same, there's so many different window variations and things. So if you Google a 1960s campervan and have a look, there's different colours and different styles and all sorts. And then I'm going to take this off. Now you can see that I've got the basics in now from the outline where I went over it. And now it's really just a case of filling it in. But I do recommend, although you may have my picture and my drawing, I do recommend that you have a picture in front of you, because this little camper van actually has some interesting shapes to it. The wheel arches are almost square and things, and it's you wouldn't really notice, you wouldn't think about it just looking at it, but it has some interesting variations and things that make it what it is. So I highly recommend that you do, even if you've got all the drawings and things, have a reference picture in front of you. So do let me know, have any of you actually been away in a VW camper van or anything like this many years ago maybe? Or even now if you've got one, I'd be fascinated to hear. Where did you go on holiday? So we went up to the Yorkshire Moors in the UK, and that was fun. Of course, it didn't have toilets or anything with it, so trying to find, when you're 5 years old, trying to find a little bush to hide behind wasn't very easy. Heather's prickly. So I've chosen to do mine in orange. I wanted a nice bright hippie-like camper van. But certainly you can literally, when you Google them, like hippie kind of ones, they're all different colours and splodges of paint and surfing scenes on them. So I think this is great. You can just have some fun, and as long as you keep the basic elements in place, you can't go wrong. And I think it'll be a lot of fun to just create whatever you want. One of the elements I would definitely keep is that V at the front, because a lot of them seem to have that V. And the red V doesn't come down to a point, it comes down to a small curve. And the other thing was, I did this and I thought, well, do they really have white bumpers? Because I've seen them on pictures and things. And then funnily enough, I was in Scarborough, which is near us in the UK. It's on the East Coast. It's a holiday destination. And what went by me was an old VW camper van with white bumpers. So I was really pleased it actually had them. Couldn't believe it drove by. There's fate for you. I hadn't realised what it was until it started to go by. Otherwise I'd have taken a photograph. So here I am just splodging colours on. I do go and refine the colours and things like that later. And on a lot of the vans, that V at the front, whatever the colour that is, whether it's white or whatever, it does seem to travel along the side of the van as well. So that's why I've got mine going somewhere along the van. Now if you look here, I cut the roof off my drawing and pinned it on so that I could get the actual proportions right for that as well. Oh, sorry about that. I have the camera right by my elbow. So this isn't actually white that I'm using at the moment. This is a very pale cream, because later on I want to add a little white over the top as a highlight colour. So I didn't want to use the brightest colour to start with. So I say this, that's why this is actually a pale cream colour. A little tip of mine would be when you're doing some of these things, like the bit I've just done between the orange and the windows, you might want to use a ruler and do that, because I had to go back right at the end when I'd finished it. I went back in, if you have a look in the final photograph, and straighten those up a little bit. So you might find needle felting along the edge of a ruler will help. Now this is a grey mixed with a bit of the sky blue, because I didn't want the windows black, I want them to reflect the sky and that, so that's why I've mixed them. You'll see I add a little bit of extra dark colours and things in later, but it's basically a pale grey with a little bit of the blue in. And you'll have to decide when you do this where you want your sunlight to come from. Maybe, well, depending on, maybe it's different when you're following another picture, because that'll affect how you put your lights around the window, the dark line, sorry, around the window. At this point I was confusing myself as to how to get the 4 windows plus the main window on this picture. This is why I don't like to admit it, but I gave up in the end, and I had the fewer windows because it was easier for me to do. So I've put little bits of varying colours on here, little bits of darker grey and lighter grey and things, because I want it to, when you look at a window, it has light bits and dark bits where it's reflecting, and so I didn't want this all one colour. And another interesting thing I discovered, because obviously I wouldn't remember from being a little tiny kiddie on holiday, but the front windows of the campervan, the windscreen, they actually open outwards, which I thought was interesting. So they actually open out like windows. So yeah, fascinating. I don't ever remember us having ours open though. I do know it had a pop-up top, and my brother slept up there, and that's why I think it rained one night, and I don't know what happened, but the join where it all ran down the pop-up roof actually leaked into the van. So that was great when I was little, because it was great fun to laugh at my brother who was completely soggy. Of course, back in those days as well, you didn't have safety belts or anything. I am talking about 1965 here. Yeah, I was trying to get the windows to actually line up, and it was like, oh, for goodness sake, and I gave up in the end. Because back then as well, we seemed to be able to park anywhere and sleep overnight in the van. I don't ever remember us going to like a campsite itself. But I don't know what it's like in the country where you live, but now in the UK it's really hard to park anywhere unless it's a campsite. They don't like you sleeping overnight anywhere. Certainly in in England, unless it's a designated campsite, it's very, very difficult to find somewhere now. There's lots of pauses because I'm thinking it through, trying to decide whether I like what I've done. Now, in the reference picture I had, it had quite an interesting reflection on the front windscreen, which I was trying to uh, partially reproduce. So this is what I'm fiddling with now. You could kind of still see through the front window to what was out the side of the van, but there was quite a big blue reflection on it as well. The black bits I'm doing here are the inside of the van. And then this blue here was the bit that was like a reflection of the sky, so that's why I've put that in. I think it works in the end. It looks all right. I'm actually looking at the final picture now while I'm saying that to you, and it does look reasonably like a reflection on the glass, so it seemed to be okay. But if you've got a reference picture, have a look at that because it'll have reflections and lights and darks on your windows anyway. And this is still looking through the van. You've got a little side window at the front, which is what I'm putting in. And this is your front dividing part from the windscreen. Again, I looked at these campers, and a lot of them had what looked like white wheel rims. So this is what I've put in, and then this grey here is going to be the hubcaps. And I've done a mid grey for this, and then I add a little very light grey or even cream back over it as well, just to get highlights and lowlights on the actual metal itself. That's what I'm doing here. I'm just adding a touch of the cream colour to it. And then I've outlined bits. This is what I could see on my reference picture. I've outlined it in a tiny bit of black, which I think is really just the shadow between the hubcap and the wheel rim. I don't think I'm going to tackle another vehicle very soon. I actually found it, well, I enjoyed it. It was an interesting one to do. This grey is so you can define the tyre from the wheel arch. but it was definitely outside my comfort zone. I have got because I'm all into vintage stuff, I do have a picture of a, I don't know, probably 1960s again, British Racing Green Mini, which I might have a go at some point. It won't be anytime soon, but I've actually got it drawn out onto felt, so I might pick that back out of my box at some point and have a go at that. I'm just playing now, adding whatever colours and things I fancy to the side of the van. I'd been excited to do this bit of the van because I thought, oh, and then when it got to it, I just couldn't think of anything to put on it. So I ended up with flowers. I had thought I was going to do paint splotches or something like that, but I'd looked at so many vans, I just got myself confused really, and so I ended up with just doing the flowers. I guess I could have done the Scooby-Doo van or something, because I'm sure they drive a camper van. But you wouldn't have to actually do things like this. You literally could just do colour splotches if you wanted to. Now, I'm pretty sure the camper van we went on holiday in was a pale blue, just like a sky blue. This is the indicator I'm putting on here. And then I don't know whether I pointed it out, but I will do just a bit of one that you can just about see on the other side as well in a minute. So I do put them both in. And then that's covered in a, well, not covered, but it's circled in a silver, I guess it would be chrome ring as well. I've now mixed some sand colour and some browns and a little bit of black, and I've mixed it together because I want a dark shadow under the van. So that's what I'm putting in now. You can see my colour, it's that big splodgy mess on the side. So I wanted it dark, really dark under the van itself, and then as it comes out from under the van it will get a bit paler. As you can see, it starts to get a little bit more brown and a little less of the black and that. But again, this will depend on where your light is coming from as to where your shadow falls around the van. And I've used my orange, I've gone back in with some bright orange just to redraw that line under the van so it's nice and crisp. And I wanted to add a little bit more grey to that tyre as well, so it stood out a bit more from the darkness under the wheel arch. Now, the bumper that I saw was a little bit almost like a triangular shape, So it had a darker edge to it along the bottom there, and then lighter on the top. This is why I'm just adding a little bit of shadow just on the lower half of the bumper. And around the top half of the camper van there was a dividing line as well, so that's what that black line is there. I'm just doing a little bit more to the red really. I wanted to darken some of that red down a little bit because the sun, just for me, the sun is hitting the van almost side on, and so I wanted a little bit darker on the red at the front. Because it's not so much that it's in shadow, it's just not getting quite as much light. And as I was saying to you, that red seemed to, when I looked at the pictures, it goes from the front, or in a lot of it, it's like a white colour, but it goes from the front and then down the side. So that's what I'm just putting it in here. I looked at so many, it did start to get confusing because they all have subtle differences. So now I'm putting in the headlight, so I've cut the circle out and I'm just putting in a grey to start with. And I will obviously fill in the other bit where I've cut it out as well. This is why I like cutting out, drawing and cutting out the templates, because it saves so much time. And while I was there, I just circled around the ring where the VW is going to go. So in this thing, headlight, I've got some grey in the middle, and then I circle it with some lighter colour, because again it's got chrome around the outside. I'm just checking they're vaguely level there. It has chrome around the outside, so I was trying to give the effect of the chrome shining the light off it, you know, as it reflects. So there's a little bit of light and dark and a tiny bit of black line going in there as well. But again, you will need your reference picture for this to see how the light's falling on your headlamp. Now this isn't black, this is dark purple, because it dipped in a bit on the picture and it was a little darker there, so I made sure to do that just in the dark purple. And now I'm starting to mark off where the panels are and where the door's going to go. So here I'm actually basically drawing in the door. So if you're enjoying this video, please don't forget to give me a like. I'd appreciate it. And again, this is the back panel. And I nearly forgot they have a funny little grille down the back there, so that's what that one is. And although you can't see it very well, unfortunately, sorry, I'm actually attempting to put in a wing mirror. And they stood right off from the van, and then they had a little round wing mirror. Again, there was some different varieties of wing mirrors, but I liked that one, so. And I'm trying very hard to get a VW here. I'm not too unhappy with the finished result of the V and the W, but it works. It shows what it is. So I don't think I'll go back and try and do anything more to it. And now I'm just putting in some extra bits on the beach. So this is some lighter sand colour. Actually, it's the cream that I used on the van, but I'm just putting it thinly over some of the sand. And nearly forgot the door handles, so I don't know how they were going to get in and out otherwise. So then I thought I'd finished, but I hadn't, and it was missing something for me. So I went back and I put in a palm tree, which I'll show you. And this is another first. I've never done a palm tree before either, so again, whipped out a reference picture. Pretty straightforward actually. I'd cut that bit off the top, and then I decided I wanted the palm tree. I was going to have it coming down into that hillside, and then I changed my mind and I wanted it to come down in front of it. So that's why I took the bit off the top and put it on the bottom. And then it was just a case of putting some green frondy things at the top. The way I did it was really, I just blocked the green leaves in first, and then I went back and added a few of the smaller leaves that hang off, so it looks like the leaves are split. Fronds, I'm not really sure what they're called. Anyway, I went in and added a few extra bits like that, just so it actually looked like it. I didn't do it on every leaf though. You'll see what I mean in a minute. And I did also just highlight them with a touch of lighter green in places as well. So this is me trying to add, it worked, it'll do, little extra leafy bits off the sides, so the leaves look split rather than solid. It was a little fiddly and I had to have a few goes at it, but once I got the hang of it, it was fine. Do let me know if you've had any interesting campervan holidays, places you've been to in them, especially if it's a VW campervan. I'll be fascinated to hear. Please give me a like and a subscribe, and I will see you either next Tuesday or next Friday for the next video. Thank you for being with me. Bye for now.